I have a question that's what makes me wonder is, and it's a bit weird because I know consciousness is nothing but love and peace and happiness. It's a knowing. And I also believe in the 7 Hermetic principles.
In?
The 7 Hermetic principles. One of them is the principle of polarity, for example, that says that everything that exists exists from both its opposites, right? So when there is anger, there's also love. And when there is fear, there's also the opposite. So what can you tell me about consciousness not having a polarity in itself?
Yes, the experience of fear is an experience of the mind. So as you rightly say, the experience of fear only exists by comparison to our memory of the experience of safety. We know what safety feels like. And because our safety is compromised, we feel fear. If we didn't know the experience of safety, it wouldn't be possible to know the experience of fear. So you're right, at the level of the mind, that there is this polarity. But consciousness is prior to mind. It is consciousness itself that divides itself into the multiplicity and diversity of experience that we call mind. But prior to that, to that dividing of itself into the forms of experience, there is only itself. So that there is a single indivisible substance, that there are not two things. Advaita, not two. That's where the meaning of the word Advaita or non-duality comes from. That there is a single indivisible substance. Take what happens to your mind when you have a dream at night. Would you agree that your mind is a single field? At least in the context of this conversation, your mind is a single unified field that has the potential to assume the form of any dream. Tonight, you could have any of an infinite number of dreams. So your mind is now a single unified field, but it has the ability to assume the form of any dream in which a multiplicity and diversity of objects appear. So the single field of your mind has the ability to appear as a dreamed world consisting of a multiplicity and diversity of objects. In other words, your mind seems to divide itself into numerous parts without ever compromising its wholeness or its integrity. Now, I'm suggesting that consciousness, that each of our minds, that is the totality of each of our experiences, is a dream in the mind of infinite consciousness. Our minds have the ability to have one dream at a time. But I would suggest that consciousness has the ability to dream innumerable dreams at the same time. And I would suggest that each of our minds was a dream in the mind of consciousness. So consciousness, as it were, refracts itself through the activities of each of our minds and appears to itself as the world without ever losing or compromising its singularity or its wholeness. So at the level of mind, there is multiplicity and diversity. But the stuff out of which that multiplicity and diversity is made, it's never itself divided or limited. It is the infinite that appears as the finite, but never actually becomes the finite. Your TV screen appears as 10,000 things in the movie, but never actually ceases to be a single transparent, indivisible screen.
Yes, I get that. So I've been thinking about that too. And then I thought, so my conclusion there was, might it be, but it's just, might it be that our perceived reality is the opposite of consciousness?
What do you mean by the opposite of consciousness? I could say yes or no to that question, depending on what you mean by the opposite of consciousness.
Yeah, that what we create by our mind is actually creating even more separation between things, and therewith.
Okay, I'm going to say yes in that case to your question. Is what we perceive the opposite of consciousness? So I'm going to say yes, but I want you to be sure that you understand what I mean when I say yes, because from another point of view, I could equally say there is no opposite to consciousness. So what do I mean when I say yes? Now again, take your mind. When you have a dream at night, your mind is a single indivisible whole. It dreams a world, the dreamed world, within itself. But in order to view that world, it has to enter into its own dream and become a separate subject of experience in that dream, from whose point of view it views the dreamed world. In other words, your own unlimited, relatively speaking, and indivisible mind divides itself into two parts, a multiplicity and diversity of objects seen by a separate subject. Now, although your entire mind is a field of knowing, in the dream, its knowing seems to be located in the dreamed character, the character in the dream from whose point of view the dreamed world is known, yes? Yes. When Mary falls asleep at night, she dreams she's Jane on the streets of London. Mary's mind is a single field of knowing, but her knowing seems to be limited to and located in Jane's body.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, so Jane, the separate subject of experience in the dream, seems to contain the consciousness, the knowing with which the dreamed world is known. Therefore, the world that is known must appear to Jane as other than consciousness, because she holds all the consciousness that is the contents of Mary's mind. So the world must be something other than myself, other than consciousness. Now, what is the name that Jane and her friends give to this stuff out of which the dreamed world seems to be made, that is other than consciousness? Matter. Yes. Matter is the stuff that in our culture we consider to be other than consciousness or outside consciousness. So in that sense, the world made out of matter seems to be the opposite of consciousness, seems to be the opposite of the stuff that Jane's mind is made of. So from Jane's point of view, that is, from the point of view of the separate subject of experience, from whose point of view the world seems to be known, experience is divided into two parts: knowing on the inside, or consciousness on the inside, and not consciousness or matter on the outside. That is why in the dream we seem to be a center of knowing. Our knowing is located behind our eyes, and everything else seems to be not myself, made out of something other than myself. So for manifestation to happen, consciousness has to divide itself in two. There has to be two substances for creation to take place. There has to be knowing and matter, self and not self, me and not me. So at the level of mind, yes, there is consciousness and there is not consciousness or matter. In that sense, the world is the opposite of consciousness. Only at the level of the mind, the world seems to be other than consciousness. It is made out of matter. It is solid, whereas consciousness is transparent. It is everything that consciousness is not. Consciousness is transparent, empty, without form. Matter is dense, solid, with form. It seems to be the opposite of the consciousness that knows it. In that sense, we could say the world is the opposite of consciousness. At a more absolute level, we're now talking about the nature of Mary's mind, not the nature of Jane's mind. At the level of consciousness itself, we cannot speak meaningfully of the opposite of consciousness, because there is nothing in consciousness other than consciousness, which could be other than itself. So at a higher level, there is no opposite to consciousness. But at the level of the mind, we can meaningfully talk of mind and matter, or consciousness and matter.